to Planetary Spirit, coming to you on ETIN, Emerson Talk and Information Network. My name is Jeff Ferranini, and I invite you on an exploration of spirituality. And my guest today is Ramon Manuel Almonte, who is an author as well as the co-host of the Hundredth Monkey Radio Show. And he was born in New York and born of Dominican immigrant parents and raised in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He is at an early age fell in love with UFOs, or what he calls UFOlogy, science fiction, and spirituality, which have helped to mold his life. He is the author of a book, a very interesting book, which we'll be speaking about today, entitled Scratching the Cosmic Conscience. And his website for the Hundredth Monkey Radio Show is www.the100thmonkeyradio.com. That's THEHundredthmonkeyradio.com. So it is indeed a pleasure to welcome today to Planetary Spirit, calling from Japan, Ramon Manuel Almonte. Hey, Ramon, how are you?
Just great.
All right.
How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. So, really exciting to have you contacting Planetary Spirit all the way from Japan, and also excited about this book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, and also just kind of a little bit about who you are, because you say in your kind of bio in your book that you've had some very interesting experiences along the way as a child that kind of gave you a sense of the world outside of the five senses that we have come to see as reality. You say here, one of my earliest memories at around age 2 or 3 was when I had an out-of-the-body experience. I recall seeing my body and trying to get my baby bottle, and my hand kept going through the bottle. Now, I mean, all I could say is I can't even remember age 2 or 3. So I'm just amazed that you have this recollection of, first of all, being conscious at age 2 or 3, but having this spiritual awareness at age 2 or 3. How was that for you?
That's one of the things I think, now thinking back 30-something odd years later, it's been very key, because that, from my recollection, that's the foundation, the key to everything. When I was going through the experience, the only thing I didn't care about that I'm looking at my body. All I care about was getting the baby bottle.
Sure.
And I don't remember, after that, I don't remember anything else. So from that age, that's the only thing I really remember. After that, the next memories would be like 4 or 5. But whatever allowed me to keep that memory, I think it served a huge purpose. Because from that memory is when all the other, anything that's strange came up, or I saw anything strange, that really was a foundation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you also said that at age 11, you had a teacher who had this interesting name, Miss Mintz, who taught us, or I guess the class you were in, meditation.
Yeah, she would come in right before lunch, and she wasn't our main teacher, we would have her for creative writing and stuff like that. And she taught us to focus on what she called a blue pearl. She would take us to this meditation, which was amazing. Public school, New York City, 1980s, unheard of. I didn't even know what was it she was teaching us. And then she would tell us, okay, focus that you're on a beach, and then float into the sky, and then focus on the blue pearl and see the blue light. And some kids would fall asleep, and some kids, kids are kids, and they would just act up. But some of us really got into it. And, for a few months I practiced it, and once I went to the next grade, you kind of forget things and stop practicing it. But that's another key component to my life. And, I hate to admit this, but I wasn't the best student, and I wasn't well-behaved all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we gave her hell, but she gave me one of the greatest gifts ever.
Now, looking back, there are angels that come into our lives, and some of them are embodied, and some of them are in the spiritual realm. I'm just wondering if you have had any kind of deeper feeling or sense if this woman by the name of Miss Mintz was sort of an angel for you.
She was what I would call a plug. What I mean by that is you have, for example, your coffee maker, and then you have a plug. Without that plug, that coffee maker doesn't work. So she was that for me, because at that time period, it didn't have any meaning for me. It just was something that felt nice, and that's cool, and whatever, where's my Nintendo? But looking back from now, that really, again, that really was a foundation, because I don't think she herself realized the kind of gift that she was giving us. And it wasn't only our class. Like, she always had the second graders, and I was in fourth grade at the time, and she would always teach her kids. So who knows how many of these kids that was, the beginning of their awakening. Not everybody took to it, but for the few of us who did, it was such a huge gift. And she passed away now, but she really gave us a huge gift.
So are you saying that from the fourth grade on, because of what she instilled in you, that you maybe off and on have been meditating since the fourth grade?
No, I stopped meditating a few months after we finished school. June came by, and I kind of forgot about it for years till I was around 16 when I got in trouble with the law, and that's when, I realized, okay, I have to focus on something, because I was becoming very, I was out of control. So I had to find some kind of focus in my life, and that really helped. So I was able to go back to what she taught me.
Okay.
Those years before.
It's interesting how sometimes seeds get planted, but they don't sprout, but they stay in the ground ready. And when we're ready, it seems like the water, the sunlight, and the warmth find them and then tell them, okay, now it's time for you to send up a shoot and to receive the sunlight.
You know what it reminds me of? I can't remember the name of the plant, but there's this one type of plant, and I'm sure there's other types, that in order for it to grow, there has to be a wildfire. And when it's exposed to a certain amount of heat, afterwards it opens up and the seeds come out. So this flower doesn't let its seed out all the time, just every once in a while. And that's what it kind of reminds me of, because it wasn't until what some alchemists would call personal calcination, me going through that experience was the beginning of my personal calcination where okay, I have to grow, and then that's where I had to look for something deeper than just the external. And I found the seed hidden somewhere deep inside.
Well, let's get into this book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, because there's really, even though this is 120 some odd pages, there's a lot here between these two covers. And Ramon, I've asked you if you would, just to read the first page, which I find, I'm always curious, how is somebody going to draw me into their world? What are you going to do to stop me from the TV I have at my disposal, the cell phone or the smartphone, the radio, all these other distractions in the world? And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to look at this page, and how are you going to draw me in? And
I'm going to use mass hypnosis. No.
Wow, maybe there is something going on here, because I couldn't put this book down. So
I'm glad to hear that.
I just want people to get a taste of how this book starts, and, it really did draw me in. So if you would, Ramon, please read the first page. The first chapter is entitled Finding My Bliss.
Okay. He finds himself sitting in front of a California red oak tree, with his back leaning up against its trunk. He can feel a presence from the tree. He senses the movement of the tree's roots. Several roots rise up from the ground, and they hug him. Now, he does not feel like he's in any danger, and embraces in nurturing. And the embrace is nurturing. For that reason, he does not try to fight it. Then he hears a voice. Who are you? He answers, I'm Trevor. Who are you? He asks. He suddenly feels nervous. Again, it asks, who are you? The voice sounds like an old man. But as Trevor looks around, he sees no one. A fog begins to set in, and the area becomes hazy. Suddenly, one of the roots shoots straight up in front of him and hovers. The root tip pointing directly at his face. Trevor said, I don't know what the hell you are talking about. I'm Trevor from New York. Again, it asked, who are you? No aggression is heard in the voice. There's even a calm. Even so, he feels his bowels loosen. Suddenly, the point of the root shoots straight into his chest. But curiously, he feels no pain. Instead, he feels a warm energy engulfing him, a feeling almost like liquid. He tries to understand his feelings. He is frightened out of his mind, and yet he feels comfortable at the same time. How else could he explain it? He knows that there's something he has to do. Though nothing is said, he has an urgent feeling. But what? He sees images in his head of building something. Trevor woke up startled. He felt disoriented, and at first glance around, he almost forgot that he was home. When he turned to look at the clock, it was 10 a.m. Luckily, it was his day off. What a strange dream. He really could not understand it well.
Yeah. So, here you have Trevor asking the essential question of everyone who I think at one point in our life has to ask this question, the same question that the caterpillar asks Alice in Through the Looking Glass, who are you? And then he's got this tree energy which is sticking a root directly into his chest, but curiously, he feels no pain.
Yeah, that, there's a lot of metaphors in there, and the one part is, who are you? We're always looking to find that answer, and I think that's an answer that's always evolving. It's always an evolving answer, and the other part is the connection between the tree and him, and nature and us, and because we're so disconnected, we don't have any idea what we're doing, where we're going, or who we are. I mean, and it all leads back to ourselves. But when you find that connection within yourself, then you find a connection with everything else. But most of us try to find a connection outside and then inside, instead of inside and outside.
But I think also it reminds me a little bit, this question, this essential question, who are you? As a Zen koan, Koan, which is a question that really doesn't have a logical answer, such as, what is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in the forest but nobody is around, does it make a sound? Those are questions that get your mind spinning in a certain direction, in a certain way, but they don't really have a logical way to answer them. And so you sort of take them in and just sit with that discomfort and allow it to kind of bubble up and percolate in some way that brings you to a deeper awareness, but not an understanding. Would you say that might be right?
Yes. The other thing about those questions is that it does something very important, which is breaking the thought cycle. The everyday thinking, because from as soon as we hit around the age of 5, between 5 and 7, we're taught that we have to think and think about everything and plan everything. And what those questions do is they help break those cycles, because they have no real answer, you kind of draw a blank and you sit there with that. And because you can't find a logical answer, it breaks the logical mind. So it gets what some people would call the monkey mind out of the way, and bring in that higher awareness, because to look for those answers, it takes a higher awareness. Your analytical mind can't process that. So that's why those questions are so important.
Now, the other thing that I found interesting was that even though this is a very far-reaching novel, this is futuristic, this is spiritual, this is scientifically looking beyond where we are today, there's also sprinkled in and around this work the energy of pain. And there's a quote that you end your acknowledgments with by Alex Collier, where you say, or the quote is, "The love you deny is the pain you carry." How much of a thread throughout the novel did the novel depend upon in order to help the healing to come about that Trevor needs in order to move forward on his spiritual journey?
That question, and I'm not promoting this, to each their own, but for me personally, when I heard that, Alex Collier talking, it was on YouTube, and he said that quote, and it stuck in my head so much that I went out and tattooed it on my forearm. So every morning when I look at my forearm, I would see that, and I can consistently ask myself that question and read it and remind myself. throughout the book, and even in my own life, it's where's the love being denied? So, for example, when you have several different types of people that look at it in different ways, and that's not saying anything negative about anybody. It's just we're all in different places, and that's okay. So some women will look at my arms like, "Oh, what girl broke your heart?" Well, is that real love? I mean, it goes a little deeper than that because, so for example, if I'm showing a girl or a friend love and they're denying it, and I keep pushing that out, and all I keep getting back is pain, then what am I denying? I'm denying myself love. And that's the number one person that gets denied the most is yourself. You deny yourself. You talk bad about yourself. You say the worst things. You doubt yourself. I mean, if you think about it, if any of your friends reacted the way you react to yourself, you wouldn't be friends with them. I would hope you wouldn't be friends with them. So we deny ourselves love, which is number one, because if you're giving yourself true, real love, then to put that love out there, that unconditional love, becomes easier. And that's not something that I've mastered, but I'm working on little by little.
Okay.
We're all working. It's a work in progress.
Okay. So let me ask you, Ramon, you know, a lot of people say that you write about what you know best, you know, what's kind of personal to you. I'm just wondering how much of Trevor is modeled on your life.
Trevor is modeled a huge part of my life, and also mixed in with other people's lives. Dear friends of mine and close friends of mine, and it's a mixture. But there is definitely a lot of me in there. Those people who grew up with me and know me, okay, they know exactly. A lot of it has to do with myself.
So, did you in fact lose a relationship, a love, through violence at some point in your life?
No, that part is fictional. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
That part, but I did go through something that it felt like it. That might be the wrong comparison, but at the moment in that time period, it felt like it. I had a relationship, and I was completely brokenhearted. I couldn't even look at another woman for several months. I just was completely shut down. It numbed me inside. I became very numb after that relationship, and that's where that's draw upon. It's that stories draw from that. So that's where that comes from. But luckily, no, nothing like that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Ramon, we're going to take a short break now, so if you'll stay on the line for a few more minutes.
Do you want me to sing while you take us out? Or no?
No, actually, we're going to have somebody do that for us.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't think you want me singing.
But thanks for offering. And you'll find that I won't sing either, and you'll be grateful for that, too.
Well, we'll sound like two cats meowing.
Yeah. Or fighting. Okay. So just stay on the line with us, because we're going to come back for the second half of the show, and would like to talk to you more about your book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So you're listening to Planetary Spirit. This is Jeff Fiorentini, and we're talking today with my guest, Ramon Manuel Almonte, about his book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience. And he is not only the author of that, but he's also the co-host of the 100th Monkey Radio Show. And his website is www.the100thmonkeyradio.com. THEHUNDREDTHMONKEYRADIO.com. So we're taking a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. back to Planetary Spirit. This is Jeff Ferranini, and we're talking today with my guest, Ramon Manuel Almonte, who is the author of Scratching the Cosmic Conscience. And we were just listening to Wake Up and Dream is the cut, and that was vocals by Gail Tossing of Heart Song, written by Ed Tossing and Tom Bishop, and that's from a compilation CD entitled Spirit of Love. So, welcome back, Ramon, from Japan. And so, again, talking about your book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, where then did this idea come from? I mean, because this idea is really far-reaching and way out there, but at the same time really quite playful, of bringing a connection to a intelligence far, far away from the Earth, this planet that we call home, but also looking at the energy of plants in a much more advanced perspective and viewpoint than ever we have given credit for. I particularly liked when the computers that your people who were assembling this computer are covered in these vines. And then the scientist in the group looks at it and says, I'm not sure how this happened, but we've like 10 times our ability now to compute, and I've got like 20 computers hooked up in order to have the amount of power that we've got, and it's just 10 times that power. Where did that idea come from, Ramon?
That idea came from years of watching the Discovery Channel, and more important, watching a documentary called The Secret Life of Plants.
Okay.
If the listeners out there have never watched this, go find it, go watch it, read the book. It's some of the most important work, and I don't care if you hate science, it's very important work because it's scientifically proven that we're all connected. The idea that, because I was writing this book, I'm thinking, well, how is it that we can, in my imagination, how is it that we can be environmentally friendly yet technologically advanced? Because the ideas we have now is, we have in our head that we can't have both. We either have one or the other. And I'm thinking, no, that's not true. The way we're doing it might not be the right way now.
Amen.
But there has to be a way. So these, I would sit down and just write, and these ideas would come to me. Whenever I sat down to write, I would, do a similar prayer like you do before. It's like, okay, let me write what needs to be heard. I'm hoping that, some teenage kid or some grad student looks at the book and says, I think I can do that. Because we don't really give science fiction the credit. For example, you have the cell phone. That comes from Star Trek, and you have all these science fiction things that really innovate, get these scientists thinking. So I'm hoping that someone will pick it up and let's figure out what's he talking about.
Yeah, I particularly liked the way that you kind of introduced us to that, in your basement with two friends, kind of reminded me of like how Apple started or Microsoft. It's this back in the garage type of technology, and now the world will never be the same. But okay, so you basically do a Star Trek dematerialization in your basement from this equipment that you've created. You go to this other planet, and when you arrive at this other planet, it's, similar to Earth, in that there's a huge amount of the green nation, or the trees and plants and sky and land around. There's not a lot of water visible, and you make friends with one of the tree people, whose name, interestingly enough, is Sequoia. So talk a little bit about Sequoia and how he befriends you as you arrive at this new world.
Sequoia is an enlightened being who's very in touch, very telepathic, very sensitive. And, you know, the way they verbally speak is they don't have any mouths. So their body is almost like a speaker. So think about it. When you say something, your mouth is vibrating, and the people not only hear that, but more importantly, they feel that. That's why, for example, if someone's talking bad about you in a different language, you know. Or if someone's saying something good about you, you know, even though you don't understand what they're saying, but you feel it. So that was the whole idea behind Sequoia. And Sequoia has, you know, he's, I'm trying to remember, he's around 5,000 years old, so he's had a long history of being to Earth, and he's kind of like a sociologist, and he helps bring in new cultures and kind of help them open up. And when you read a book and you see his name, like, well, where did they, you know, the idea is, where did the Native Americans get the name from? And, you know, so Sequoia is a character that I would really, really love to meet one day, in real life. And he's funny and gentle, and at the same time, he has that somewhat of a tough love, but not really tough love. He just lets you be when you need to be.
So let me read this passage here from your book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, about Sequoia. And you say, Sequoia lowered his head and got down on one knee, or we could say one root. You know, the worst enemies and best friends we could have are ourselves. Trevor thought about this for a minute. He knew deep down inside Sequoia was right. Even because he felt great, he knew he was not over Felicia's death, and it still haunted him. Sequoia continued, the most important thing is awareness of the inner world and non-biased emotions. You do not bottle them, you accept them and observe them, but you don't become involved. Trevor had lowered his head almost in shame. He knew how tough this was going to be. This was going to be the toughest thing he ever had to do. On the other hand, he was aware of the indescribable benefits he was going to gain as well. He gave Sequoia a big hug and walked into the middle of the plant. The leaves soon lifted up completely and covered him. Light appeared, and the next thing he noticed, he was in a hut. He looked out the windows, and the scenery was amazing. He could see above all the trees. He could see for many miles, and the sky was completely clear. So, can you tell people where exactly is Trevor going in this? I mean, this is where he's about to meet Aguria, and he's about to spend 45 days with Aguria. And who is Aguria, and what is Trevor about to partake in?
Well, that part comes from my own life. I didn't spend 45 days, but I spent 2 weeks in silent meditation in a place called Vispasna, and they have them all over the country. And even though it's branches from Buddhism, they don't push any religious views or anything, so it doesn't matter what your spiritual views are. I would suggest anybody to go. I spent 2 weeks there in silence, and let me tell you, it was the most best thing I've ever done for myself, but at the same time, the hardest thing. And as you can see, Trevor himself kind of at one point starts going crazy, and that's exactly because imagine being stuck in a room with a person you despise and being stuck in a small little room and say, okay, get along. And that's exactly what's going on. You're stuck with your thoughts, and you get a chance to really work on them. And for some people, it's a little too much. For other people, it's a huge breakthrough. But as far as Aguria is 49, I think it was 49 or 48,000 year old tree. So I took the giant redwoods from California and just exaggerated it. And just imagine the knowledge that these trees have. So I gave this tree not so much a voice, but like a feeling. What do these trees know? I mean, any being that's in this realm that we call reality for that long has to be full of knowledge. So our trees live around 3,000 is it, or 2,000? Oh, and yeah, and I remember I went to the national park in Santa Cruz that a very old friend of mine took me to, and they had a piece of wood. It was humongous, and in each, when you look inside, like when they cut a tree, there's rings, and each ring they would mark. So there was one, the beginning, when this tree was a sapling, it was around 2,000 years ago, around the birth of Christ, and then they mark all the historical things going back. And this tree, I forgot when it was cut down. It was the 1900s. I can't remember exactly. So just imagine the knowledge. So, that's why Aguria was the spiritual, master, because it's been around the longest. And then you kind of, later in the chapters, you learn about its own history and what Aguria kind of survived, when most of its own kind of didn't survive. And so he's kind of like their spiritual master.
Yeah, and does the term the world tree mean anything to you?
The first time I heard about that term, I must have been around 8 or 9, and you won't believe what cartoon I heard it in, and it was He-Man.
Okay.
And so I've never really studied that, but I've heard it used loosely here and there, the world tree.
Well, I'm not going to say this right, but there's a Norse word, and I think it's something like Yazagadral, which is the tree that Odin, who was the, I believe, Norse king of the gods, found Yggdrasil, and he was instructed that if he wanted knowledge, he would have to tie a rope to his foot and hang upside down on the world tree for 3 days and 3 nights. And,
wow.
And from that, he was given the images or the symbols of the runes, R-U-N-E-S. So great power was given to him. He also had the ability to see forward in sight. So the world tree is a symbol that seems to come in and out of mythological stories in many cultures around the world. And when I, saw this energy of Aguirre coming through your book, I thought, well, whether you're conscious of it or not, that same archetypal image of this all-powerful, all-connecting energy in the form of a tree, in the form of a living, breathing entity, seemed to, take a very large place in what you were writing about.
Yeah, trees, they have this amazing thing. So, for example, when I went to Malaysia in 2002, and I was in Borneo, and our guide tells us, touch the ground. And I touched the ground, and he goes, it's very hard, right? He's like, try to dig, and you couldn't dig. And he was saying, how do you think these trees stay upright? Because sometimes they have these huge, not tsunami, typhoons coming through, and very strong winds, as he's explaining to us. And he says, you know how they stay together? They wrap each other's roots around each other, and the entire forest connects that way. It doesn't matter what kind of tree it is. There's no discrimination between the trees. And that's something that stuck with me since that time. This has been 10 years. And I remember exactly like if it was, an hour ago when he was saying that. And I just found that so amazing that these trees do this. I mean, they don't even have to talk to teach us a lesson.
Now, the one energy that really seemed to come through your book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, that I felt was, I don't even think you ever used the word, I'm not sure, but seemed to come through over and over again, was the energy of oneness, was the energy of all things are interdependent upon one another, and all things, whether we are aware of it or not, have an intelligence and a conscience, a consciousness. Was that something that you were hoping to impart and leave with the readers after they had finished this novel?
Yeah, that whole idea, I mean, because for me, there's a lot of solid, in my world, there's a lot of solid proof of there being a oneness. And of course we have every single spiritual text saying the same thing, but besides that, we have something called quantum entanglement. That was an experiment that was done between, I think, two electrons, and they were 11 miles apart, and they spun one way, and the other one, instantaneous, faster than the speed of light, did the same thing. So that's one. Then you have the whole thing I was talking about, the secret, what was it?
Secret life of plants.
Yeah. Where he does the experiment where he goes to burn one plant and all the other plants are freaking out. Or he even did that with different species. He did that with, I think it was brine shrimp.
Right.
When they fell into the boiling water, all the plants freaked out. So that's two solid scientific things that say we're all one. And, why is it that you feel good when something good happens to somebody else? Doesn't matter if you know them or you don't know them. Why is it that even worse is you feel bad when you see images of other people suffering? Why do you feel that? Because if we don't have any connection, then what do you care? You have to work on that. I teach English here, and I'll give you a prime example. When well, I was teaching in a preschool for a while. When one of the younger kids, like 3 years old, would fall down, one of the older kids, 5-year-old kids, would go over and pick them up and tell them, in Japanese, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And I was just amazed, because what came to my thought is, these kids shouldn't be in school. We should be the ones in school, and they should be the teachers, because we've forgotten our humanity. They're born with that. That's something you're born with. You don't learn that. What you do learn is how to become cold-hearted. That you learn. But that natural things. So that to me is another proof of us being one, that compassion.
So did this book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience and Visiting Another World, did it come to you in a dream, or was it, you're saying that The Secret Life of Plants was the jumping off point for you, but where did this idea of looking at plants with super intelligence and almost like this, what was it, Q in James Bond, who had all these interesting technology equipment to give James Bond into the next, mission he was being put on. You have all these kind of super scientific ways that these plants can create new technologies to be able to go underneath the oceans and withstand cold and do all kinds of things, become communication devices. Where did those kind of that energy come from?
That's a combination of, I love science fiction. That's one part of it. That I also love fantasy, and I love mythology. And that's, a lot of it comes from the mythology of the Ents. For those of you who don't know, you would see them in Lord of the Ring, for example.
Right.
That's where that idea comes from. And the reason why I felt that they're so intelligent, going back to what I was saying before, is because of their long lifespans, and also because they're connected to their planet that they're on. So here on Earth, they're connected, so they're sensing all of that, and that's where I was thinking, like, okay, this intelligence. And, there's no way I can prove this, but I wouldn't doubt it if some actual trees were really, helping me. Because, for example, there's this idea, I forgot what they call it, but there's this idea where, for example, you'll have a scientist or inventor invent something, put the patent in, and then have to dispute it because somebody else on the other side of the world did it at the same time as them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is consistently happening, where inventors are inventing things at the same time. So we're tapping into something.
Mm-hmm. Well, also the fact that you're talking about kind of thinking outside the box in this book, you're coming up with a way of, being a co-creator, self-actualizing, becoming empowered to utilize the technology that we have now, but to somehow go beyond the limits that we've kind of self-imposed in order to make space travel possible for the average citizen who has a technological understanding of how to put all this stuff together and has been given the dream and the intention to go forth. But with very little cost involved, Trevor goes and visits another world, and he doesn't blow up the city block with the amount of energy that's being used either. So I like the fact that you're able to take the plant intelligence and make this a friendly co-creative effort that the plants want you to come visit them as much as you were, interested in kind of going outside the bounds of where, this earth plane has kept you limited to. But the other thing was, and this is probably the last question I'm going to ask, where did you go when you were writing in your book that these plants, of all the people on the planet Earth, had selected you to be the representative and to be the repository for the information and the intelligence that they had to impart, and in effect, they had asked you to become their envoy, ambassador, bridge to what they had to offer the planet Earth. Where did you have to go in your heart in order to allow yourself to be seen in that way?
That's a very good question. That question would be a little bit hard to answer, but I would say that for we have to bring ourselves kind of the reason why they chose him, it's only one thing different from others. He wasn't smarter, he wasn't a grad student. It was, he followed his dream. Like the beginning chapter, he followed his bliss. I'll give you a very quick in my own life. So I wanted to go to Japan, to visit Japan for years, and never went waiting for something to happen for me to go. One day I decided to go live there for 3 months, and then I had the idea to write a book. I started writing my book, started looking into UFOs and spirituality a little deeper, and said, okay, it's time to write a book. And then I met my partner, and we did that. And now I'm being interviewed by other people who are also following their bliss. So one thing leads into another. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because all Trevor did was question the dream to his friend. And then his friend said, let's do it. Mm-hmm. You got nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. And then that led him from one thing to another, to another, to another. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happens to us. When you follow your true heart desires, your bliss, you don't know where it's going to take you.
Well, that's a really good answer because, we're so always used to having the definitive answer. And again, it kind of brings us back from where we started in the beginning, is that kind of that Zen koan kind of energy. What is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? We don't necessarily get the definitive answer, but we do get the energy of where that answer could come from. And so thank you, Ramon Manuel Almonte, for being my guest today on Planetary Spirit and for writing such an interesting book that is thought-provoking, entitled Scratching the Cosmic Conscience.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll send you a check for saying all the nice things.
All right. You be well. And my guest today on Planetary Spirit has been Ramon Manuel Almonte, who is the author of Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, and he's also the co-host of the 100th Monkey Radio Show. And that show, if you want to access information about it, is available at www.the100thmonkeyradio.com, THEHUNDREDTH